A bustling medieval square could make saints rise and dragons breathe fire right before your eyes. These were not simple tricks, but sophisticated stagecraft illusions that captivated entire towns for generations. Together, we will uncover the hidden mechanics behind 28 of these deceptions, from floating angels to talking heads. You will learn exactly how smoke, mirrors, and clever engineering created what audiences believed was real magic. How did a simple reflection make a single chalice multiply before a crowd? What secret allowed a performer to walk on water? By the end, you will see how these ancient spectacles laid the foundation for the special effects we enjoy today. What does it truly take to make an entire community believe in the impossible? The medieval mind lived in a world woven with both faith and folklore. Life was often short and difficult, with routines dictated by the harvest and the church calendar. This is precisely why festivals held such profound power. They were not mere diversions but vital rituals that punctuated the year, offering a collective release and a reaffirmation of shared beliefs. Imagine the dusty square of a town, normally filled with the sounds of commerce and labor, suddenly transformed. Brightly colored banners flap in the breeze, the air is thick with the scent of roasting meat and spiced ale, and the entire community, from the lowest farmer to the local lord, has gathered together. This was the stage for wonder. On holy feast days, guilds would perform mystery plays, dramatizing biblical stories for a population that largely could not read. At seasonal fairs, traveling performers, known as minstrels and jugglers, would compete for attention and coins. In this charged atmosphere, where the line between the earthly and the divine felt thin, audiences were not just willing to believe in miracles, they were actively yearning for them. A mechanical angel ascending from a church roof was not seen as a clever trick, but as a tangible glimpse of heaven. A dragon puppet spitting smoke was not just a spectacle, but a thrilling confrontation with the very real concept of evil. The artisans who built these illusions understood this deep-seated need. They were not merely engineers, they were storytellers and psychologists, crafting experiences that resonated with the deepest hopes and fears of their audience. Their deceptions worked because people wanted them to be true. This cultural context, this perfect storm of faith, community, and a thirst for the extraordinary, set the stage for illusions so convincing they could make an entire town gasp in unison. And it all began with the simplest and most versatile tool in the illusionist's kit, the humble mirror. A performer's breath could conjure a dragon, and a simple altar could channel the divine, all through the clever use of smoke. This was not the thin wisp from a candle, but a thick, aromatic cloud carefully engineered from specific materials. Damp straw produced a heavy, white haze perfect for obscuring the stage. Resins like frankincense created a fragrant, mystical atmosphere that clung to the air. These clouds served a dual purpose. Visually, they were a spectacle, suggesting everything from hellfire to heavenly mist. Practically, they were a perfect screen, hiding the assistant's operating pulley systems or the quick opening of a trapdoor beneath an actor's feet. In a mystery play, when a prophet needed to vanish, a sudden puff of smoke from a hidden brazier provided the perfect cover, leaving the audience to wonder if he had been spirited away by angels. The effect was amplified by engaging more than just sight. The distinct, sometimes sacred smell of the burning herbs and woods filled the space, making the illusion feel more real and immersive. A performer could appear to breathe fire by first taking a mouthful of finely ground resin or powder from a hidden pouch, then blowing it through the flame of a torch he held. The result was a dramatic burst of flame and smoke, transforming a man into a monster before hundreds of believing eyes. This mastery of atmosphere tapped into a deep, primal human reaction to fire and obscuring haze. Smoke signaled danger, the unknown, and the sacred, putting an audience on edge and making them far more susceptible to believing the impossible. It was the essential curtain that hid the world of mechanics, preparing the crowd for the next great deception, one built not on obscurity, but on perfect, impossible clarity. One of the most powerful deceptions began with a single, perfectly angled mirror. During a packed feast day service, the air thick with incense, a priest might call upon a saint to appear. As the congregation held its breath, a shimmering figure would materialize above the altar, seemingly conjured from the smoke itself. The secret was both simple and brilliant. A large, polished sheet of metal was concealed within the altar's structure, tilted to reflect an actor robed in white and standing in a hidden alcove to the side. To the audience, this reflection did not look like a flat image. It appeared as a solid, three-dimensional form hovering in the sacred space. The craftsmen enhanced the effect with meticulous lighting, ensuring lamps illuminated only the actor and not the mirror's frame, making the holy figure glow with an unearthly light. For a community whose faith was visceral and absolute, this was not a trick. It was a miracle, a direct communication from the divine that validated their beliefs and the authority of the church that staged it. This masterful blend of basic optics and deep understanding of human psychology transformed a simple reflection into an article of faith. It proved that the most convincing illusions are not those that fool the eye alone, but those that capture the heart. This principle of reflection would soon be pushed even further, not to summon a single holy form, but to make common objects multiply before a crowd's astonished gaze. A dragon's roar would shake the very ground, but it was the blast of fire that truly sealed the illusion of a living monster. These fire-breathing spectacles were not the work of fantasy, but of precise chemical and mechanical engineering hidden within a hollow statue or an elaborate costume. A performer safely inside would operate a simple but terrifying device. They would blow a carefully measured mixture, often of finely ground resin or oil, through a narrow metal tube aimed out of the dragon's mouth. At the tube's exit, an assistant would hold a lit torch. The moment the powder met the flame, it erupted into a searing jet that could reach several feet, creating a brilliant, roaring burst of fire that felt dangerously real to the front rows. The true genius, however, lay in the accompanying smoke. Hidden bellows forced air through chambers of smoldering, damp straw, pumping thick white clouds from the beast's nostrils. This smoke did more than just look impressive. It completely obscured the mechanics of the tube and the torch, making the entire sequence appear as a single, natural exhalation of fury from the creature itself. For a populace raised on tales of such beasts lurking in the wilderness, this was not a clever puppet. It was a manifestation of their deepest fears made flesh and flame. The spectacle tapped into a primal terror, transforming a communal story into a shared, visceral experience that left entire towns both terrified and exhilarated. This mastery over fire and fear demonstrated how a simple chemical reaction could become the heart of a legend. But what if the goal was not to terrify, but to inspire, to make a human form defy the very pull of the earth itself? A soul's journey to heaven became a breathtaking reality right before a crowd's eyes. In the midst of a morality play, as the narrative reached its most poignant moment, an actor representing a redeemed spirit would begin to ascend. Dressed in pure white robes to symbolize innocence, the performer was secretly harnessed to a rope and pulley system concealed behind a painted cloth depicting clouds or stars. A team of stagehands hidden from view would operate a counterweight, allowing the actor to rise with an ethereal smoothness that defied any obvious human effort. To perfect the deception, they timed the lift with a burst of fragrant smoke, its thick plumes artfully obscuring the ropes and any hint of the mechanism. The entire spectacle was accompanied by a swelling chorus of voices or the solemn music of pipes, building emotional tension with every foot the figure climbed. For the townspeople watching below, this was far more than a theatrical effect. It was a direct vision of salvation, a tangible promise that a virtuous life led to a glorious ascent. The mechanical lift, a simple application of physics, became a powerful tool for spiritual instruction, making abstract concepts of redemption and the afterlife feel immediate and real. This profound emotional manipulation through engineering reveals how medieval artisans understood that the greatest illusions speak to the soul. And just as ropes could lift a person skyward, another device could make them appear to defy a different law of nature, walking effortlessly across the surface of water itself. The Multiplying Chalice offered a powerful vision of divine generosity. In a dimly lit chapel, a priest would hold a single, ornate cup during the Eucharist. As he raised it, the vessel began to duplicate, its shimmering form repeating into an infinite corridor of sacred gold. The secret lay in a carefully constructed box or small enclosure on the altar, its interior walls lined with perfectly angled mirrors facing each other. The single chalice was placed precisely in the center of this mirrored space. The principle of reflection created a hall of mirrors effect, where each image bounced between the surfaces, producing the stunning illusion of endless repetition. Lighting was critical, meticulously arranged to illuminate only the chalice itself while leaving the edges of the mirrors in deep shadow, preventing any telltale lines from breaking the spell. The priest would then move the cup with a slow, ceremonial grace, causing the entire infinite array to shift in unison. This motion made the vision feel dynamic and alive, far more magical than a static image. For a congregation often facing hunger and hardship, this was more than a trick. It was a profound symbol. It visually represented the idea that God's grace was infinite and available to all, a moment of spiritual and visual abundance in a world of physical lack. This careful manipulation of reflection and perception showed how a simple principle of optics could be harnessed to nourish the human spirit. The same deceptive power of mirrors, once used to create objects, was soon adapted to do something far more audacious, to make living people appear and vanish in the blink of an eye. A knight in shining armor could dissolve into the air, leaving nothing behind but a cloud of smoke and a stunned silence. This was the Vanishing Knight, an illusion that turned a mortal man into a ghost in the blink of an eye. The secret was a perfect marriage of timing and misdirection. As the knight stood center stage, he would step onto a cleverly disguised trapdoor, a platform that could be silently and swiftly lowered by stagehands beneath the floorboards. But the true genius was in what happened the instant he began his descent. A large, perfectly polished mirror panel, already positioned and waiting, would swing into the space he had just occupied. This mirror did not reflect the knight. It reflected an empty section of the painted stage backdrop, creating the flawless illusion of an unbroken, continuous space where the performer no longer existed. The entire operation was masked by a synchronized burst of smoke and a sudden, sharp sound like a clap of thunder or a flash of powder. Your eyes and ears were deceived at the same moment, the loud noise pulling your attention just long enough for the mirror to seal the deception. In a story of wizardry and adventure, this was the ultimate proof of sorceress power, a visual confirmation that magic was real and potent. It demonstrated that the most effective illusions often rely on directing your attention away from the trick itself, making you a willing participant in your own amazement. This clever use of reflection and movement set the stage for a new era of spectacle. where the machines themselves would begin to take on a life of their own, moving and roaring with a complexity that seemed to breathe life into wood and leather. A disembodied head could prophesy the future, its wooden lips moving in perfect time with a voice that seemed to come from nowhere. This was the talking head, a mechanical oracle that captivated crowds with its chilling performance. Crafted from wood or layers of stiffened paper, the head was a hollow sculpture, meticulously painted to resemble a bearded prophet or ancient sage. Its true magic lay in the hidden details. A narrow tube, often made of leather or hollowed reed, ran from the base of the neck, snaking behind a curtain or down through a pedestal to a second performer hidden from view. This concealed operator was the voice of the oracle, speaking the scripted lines that would echo from the head's mouth. To complete the eerie illusion, an internal mechanism of simple levers and strings allowed another stagehand to manipulate the jaw, making it open and close, while other controls could shift the eyes from side to side. The entire apparatus was elevated on a stand and artfully framed by drapes or a low-hanging cloud of incense smoke, which obscured the base and created the unsettling impression that the head was floating in space, detached from any living body. For an audience deeply attuned to stories of divine messages and supernatural beings, this was not a puppet show. It was a direct channel to another realm, a moment where technology seamlessly impersonated the supernatural. The synchronization of the voice and the mechanical movements was the key to its believability, turning a simple combination of pneumatics and ventriloquism into a profound experience. This clever fusion of art and engineering demonstrated a pivotal shift, where machines were no longer just static props but interactive characters that could hold a conversation with the crowd. These automated wonders were the ancestors of the complex robots we know today, proving that the desire to breathe life into the inanimate is an ancient and powerful human impulse. A celestial being could descend directly into the midst of the crowd, its serene face tilted downward as if bestowing a silent blessing upon the faithful. This floating angel was a marvel of religious processions, a vision made possible by a deceptively simple mechanical arm. A long, sturdy pole, often painted a soft blue to disappear against the sky, extended from a wheeled platform concealed within a group of robed attendants. A lightweight performer, frequently a child, was securely fastened into a harness at the end of this arm. Their flowing white robes were not just for show, they were essential to the deception, artfully draped to hide the harness and the point of connection. As stagehands below slowly turned a crank, the entire arm would sweep in a gentle arc, making the angel appear to glide through the air on its own divine will. The effect was completed with a faint haze of incense smoke rising from the platform, further blurring the mechanical lines and creating a dreamlike halo around the figure. For the townspeople reaching out in hope, this was not a child on a pole. It was a messenger from heaven, a direct and personal affirmation of their devotion. The slow, graceful movement was key, transforming a basic lever and pivot into a profound spiritual encounter. This delicate balance of engineering and artistry made the sacred feel immediate and close enough to touch. Yet, if the goal was to inspire awe, nothing commanded attention quite like the raw, untamed power of flame and shadow. A flame could burn without any visible fuel, hovering silently in the air as a symbol of the divine. This was the eternal flame, an illusion that transformed a simple element into a profound statement of faith. The secret was a masterful manipulation of light using strategically placed mirrors. A single, robust flame would be kept burning in a hidden alcove or a shielded brazier, completely out of the audience's sight. A large, polished metal mirror, tilted at a precise angle, would then catch the reflection of this hidden fire and project it onto a specific spot, perhaps the center of an altar or within the hollow of a sacred relic. To the congregation, it appeared as a pure, solitary flame miraculously suspended in space. The craftsmen paid meticulous attention to ventilation, using discreet flues to carry away any telltale smoke from the real source, ensuring the illusion remained pristine and inexplicable. For an even more unearthly effect, some performers employed rare chemicals. A piece of phosphorus which glows with a pale, ghostly light when exposed to air could be concealed within a carved stone, making the object itself appear to emit a steady, supernatural radiance. Slow-burning oils in shallow dishes produced a steady, unwavering flame that defied the flickering nature of ordinary fire. In an age before electric light, this unwavering, fuel-less fire was not a trick of the light. It was a miracle made visible. It visually affirmed the promise of eternal life and the ever-present spirit of the divine, a powerful tool for reinforcing spiritual authority. This clever interplay of optics and chemistry proved that the most powerful illusions often play with our most fundamental expectations of reality. And just as light could be made to defy its source, sound could be engineered to seem to come from nowhere at all, creating voices that whispered on the wind. A sacred relic could transform before the eyes of the faithful, its very substance seeming to shift under a divine influence. The transforming relic was a masterclass in psychological manipulation, turning a simple object into a dynamic source of wonder. Relics, the bones of saints or fragments of the true cross, were the heart of medieval devotion, believed to hold immense spiritual power. Illusionists amplified this power with clever mechanics. A relic might be housed in an ornate reliquary with a hidden compartment, allowing a secondary object, such as a piece of polished crystal or a sliver of luminescent horn, to be subtly slid into place over the original by a concealed lever. To the crowd, it appeared the relic itself had begun to glow with an inner light. Another method used tiny, strategically placed mirrors and pieces of colored glass within the display case. A hidden assistant, perhaps blending in with the pilgrims, would signal another to adjust a shielded lantern. This would cause a beam of light to hit the mirrors, projecting shimmering patterns or a sudden halo of color directly onto the relic. The effect was instantaneous and breathtaking. For a believer, this was not a trick, it was a confirmation, a visible sign of the saint's presence and favor. This sacred stagecraft had a very earthly purpose, of course. A relic that performed miracles would draw more pilgrims from farther away, and each pilgrim meant more donations to the church or monastery, fueling both its spiritual authority and its financial stability. The transformation was not just in the object, but in the entire economy of faith surrounding it. These intricate deceptions within a small box demonstrated a principle that would soon be scaled up dramatically, where the very walls of a building would seem to come alive with sound and motion. A miniature fortress could transform an entire battlefield, shrinking into the distance as a heroic army advanced. This shrinking castle illusion turned a simple wooden stage into a vast, epic landscape through the clever manipulation of forced perspective. The castle itself was a detailed model, mounted on a low, wheeled platform that could be smoothly pulled away from the audience along a set of hidden tracks. As it moved, the background changed in sync. Painted backdrops showing progressively smaller trees and hills would be lowered behind it. Sometimes, performers would even bring smaller, duplicate castles onto the stage, swapping them seamlessly behind a puff of smoke to complete the trick. The true genius was in the coordinated sensory assault. The rumble of drums mimicked the march of soldiers, growing fainter as the castle retreated. Shouts from the actors created the impression of a vast, receding army. A carefully timed smoke cloud would obscure the moment the castle model was swapped or reached the end of its track, making its disappearance feel magical rather than mechanical. For the crowd, this was not a small model on a cart. It was a real stronghold falling away into the horizon, a visual representation of a journey or a siege playing out right before them. This mastery of visual storytelling proved that epic scale was not a matter of budget, but of perception. By understanding how the human eye interprets distance, these medieval artists could make a 50-foot stage feel like a 100-mile march, pulling the audience completely into the heart of the story. This clever deception of scale set the stage for an even more immersive experience, one that would incorporate the most unpredictable element of all, water itself. A performer could step onto a still pond and glide across its surface as if gravity itself had been suspended. This walking on water illusion was one of the most powerful demonstrations of stagecraft, recreating a biblical miracle for an astonished crowd. The secret was not divine power, but a series of carefully placed submerged platforms. These supports, made of wood or stone, were positioned just inches below the waterline in a shallow trough or a specially prepared section of a pond. A cloth, painted with ripples and reflections to perfectly mimic the surrounding water, was stretched taut over the entire structure. When the performer stepped out, their foot landed not on liquid, but on this solid, invisible path. To sell the deception, hidden assistants used long poles or submerged fans to agitate the water around the platforms, creating convincing ripples that disguised the rigid edges and made the surface appear uniformly fluid. Sometimes craftsmen would lay sheets of polished metal or dark, reflective cloth on the bottom of the pool. This enhanced the illusion of a deep, bottomless body of water, making the submerged walkway even more imperceptible. A strategic puff of smoke at the water's edge could further obscure the starting point of the platform, making the performer's first step onto the surface seem like a sudden, miraculous event. For a community living by the rhythms of faith, this was not mere entertainment. It was a visceral reaffirmation of their beliefs, a tangible proof that the miracles described in Scripture could manifest in their own town square. It perfectly blurred the line between holy narrative and physical reality, using clever engineering to strengthen spiritual conviction. This masterful manipulation of a natural element demonstrated that the most convincing illusions often work with the environment, not against it. And just as humans were guided across hidden paths, the stagecraft of the era frequently enlisted creatures from the animal kingdom to heighten the spectacle. A wooden serpent could rise from the river, its scaled body glistening with water and its jaws snapping at the air with terrifying precision. These mechanical beasts were far more than simple puppets. They were complex creations of wood, leather, and finely crafted metal. Inside the hollow body, a system of cranks, levers, and ropes awaited the command of a hidden operator. With a turn of a handle, the creature's head would swivel, its tail would lash, and its leather wings would unfold with a dramatic snap. To breathe life into this framework, a second performer was essential, crouched inside the beast or concealed nearby. They provided the chilling soundscape, bellowing deep roars through a leather-speaking tube or creating menacing hisses that seemed to emanate from the creature's very core. This fusion of art and engineering created a believable antagonist for the morality plays and saintly dramas that captivated towns. In a story of St. George, the dragon was not a man in a costume. It was a monstrous, independent entity that truly seemed to threaten the hero. The creature's entrance and exit were as carefully staged as its performance. It would surge upward through a trapdoor hidden by the murky water of a town's pond or erupt from a dense, pre-arranged smoke cloud on land. Its departure was just as swift, vanishing back into the obscuring elements before the audience could scrutinize the mechanics. This careful choreography of appearance and disappearance preserved the mystery, allowing the beast to live on in the community's memory not as a clever machine, but as a genuine mythical encounter. These automated marvels demonstrated a pivotal partnership where human ingenuity did not just build the beast, but performed alongside it, creating a spectacle greater than the sum of its parts. Even the stone guardians of the cathedral could stir to life during a festival. High on the rain-spattered facade, a gargoyle would slowly turn its head, its stone eyes seeming to scan the crowd below. The secret to this animation was often a performer tucked into a hidden alcove or a cramped passage within the thick church walls, working a series of nearly invisible strings and levers connected to the statue's movable parts. A gentle pull on a cord could make the creature's jaw drop open, while a push on a wooden rod might cause a carved hand to lift or a grotesque tongue to loll out. To complete the illusion, a second stagehand, positioned elsewhere, would use a leather-speaking tube to project a low, gravelly voice that seemed to emanate directly from the stone itself. This was more than just a puppet show. It played upon the very real superstitions people held about these architectural features. Gargoyles were not merely decorative, they were believed to ward off evil spirits, and seeing one move was a thrilling confirmation of their protective power, blurring the line between sacred sculpture and living demon. By integrating performance into the architecture itself, these artists transformed the familiar stonework of daily life into a source of active, participatory magic. This seamless fusion of building and performance demonstrated that the stage was not always a defined platform, but could be the entire town. And if a stone figure could be made to speak, then surely a shadow could be given a soul of its own. A ghostly legion could materialize on the horizon, its silent march casting a chill over the entire festival. The Phantom Army was a masterpiece of shadow play, a spectral force conjured from little more than cut-out shapes and clever lighting. Performers would set up a large, translucent screen of oiled cloth or thin parchment, and behind it they arranged a series of lanterns. Between these lights and the screen, they moved flat, soldier-shaped silhouettes along hidden tracks or wires. The closer a figure was moved toward the lantern, the larger and more distorted its shadow became upon the screen, creating the illusion of a vast, looming host advancing from the misty distance. To make the army retreat, they simply reversed the process, pulling the cutouts away from the light to shrink the shadows into a haunting memory. The visual deception was only half the story. Hidden musicians and chanters provided the soundscape, their voices muffled and drums played with a deadened thud to create an echoing, otherworldly din that seemed to travel across a great plain. This eerie symphony played directly upon deep-seated fears of invasion from a neighboring lord or the lingering tales of ancient battles fought on that very soil. For the audience, this was not a story from a book. It was a visceral threat materializing before their eyes, a collective nightmare given form. The true genius of the Phantom Army was its breathtaking economy. With a few pieces of wood, some cloth, and a flickering flame, these artists could evoke an epic, terrifying scene that required no elaborate sets or large casts of actors. It proved that the most powerful illusions are often the simplest, relying on the human mind's incredible capacity to fill in the gaps and complete the picture of its own fears. This manipulation of light and shadow to alter perception did more than tell a story. It warped the audience's very sense of reality, setting the stage for illusions that would manipulate something even more fundamental, the flow of time itself. A character's entire life could unfold in a single, breathless scene. In the midst of a morality play, a vibrant youth would stumble behind a billowing curtain, only to emerge moments later as a figure bent with age, his face a web of wrinkles and his hair turned white. This rapid aging was a theatrical magic trick built on speed and sleight of hand. The performer's brief disappearance was the crucial window, behind the screen or through a trapdoor, a team of skilled assistants waited. They worked with the precision of a pit crew, swiftly applying a pale powder to hair or a pre-styled white wig. They layered on thin, wrinkled latex prosthetics crafted from animal bladders or glued on tufts of wool for a scraggly beard. A voluminous, drab cloak was thrown over the bright tunic of youth, instantly transforming the character's silhouette from one of vigor to one of weary decline. This visual transformation was sold by the narrative itself. As the character vanished, a narrator might solemnly intone about the swift passage of years, or the music would shift from a sprightly tune to a mournful dirge. When the aged figure reappeared, his movements told the rest of the story, a slow, shuffling gait replacing the energetic stride of moments before. For the audience, this was a powerful, condensed lesson on the transience of life. It made the abstract concept of time feel terrifyingly tangible and immediate. The entire illusion was a testament to backstage collaboration, where every second counted and every team member had to perform their task flawlessly to sustain the spell. This fascination with transformation was not limited to the human form, however. The same creative spirit was soon applied to the very world the characters inhabited, making forests grow and castles crumble before a crowd's disbelieving eyes. A dry wooden staff, barren as a winter branch, could erupt into a riot of color and life with a single tap upon the ground. This was the miracle of the blooming staff, a spectacle that transformed a simple rod into a symbol of divine election. The secret was a hollow core, carefully bored out and packed with tightly folded silk flowers or delicate feathers dyed in vibrant hues. A thin, nearly invisible string ran from this compartment down the length of the staff to an accomplice in the crowd or a hidden stagehand. At the pivotal moment in the play, when a saint like Joseph needed to prove his chosen status, the performer would strike the staff on the floor. This was the signal. The accomplice gave the string a sharp pull, releasing a hidden latch and allowing the compressed blossoms to spring forth in a sudden, breathtaking burst. To perfect the deception, a small puff of smoke was often triggered at the base of the staff simultaneously, artfully masking the mechanical sound and the exact point of origin for the flowers. In more elaborate versions, a hidden compartment contained a small amount of chemical powder. When released, this powder would react with the air or with a substance coating the inside of the flowers, creating a subtle color shift or a faint, shimmering movement that made the blooms appear to be alive and growing. For a community whose survival was tied directly to the fertility of the land, this was not a simple trick. It was a powerful visual parable. The barren staff becoming fruitful was a direct metaphor for divine favor, a promise that their fields, too, could be transformed from dust to abundance. It resonated with the deepest hopes of an agricultural society, turning a clever piece of stagecraft into a profound reassurance. This manipulation of nature's appearance set the stage for even grander ambitions, where the artisans would attempt to command the very weather itself. The very heavens could be commanded within the wooden walls of a pageant wagon. A controlled storm brought the fury of the gods indoors, a symphony of manufactured chaos designed to shake an audience to its core. The sound of thunder did not come from the sky, but from a team of drummers rhythmically beating large, thin sheets of copper or iron, creating a deep, resonant rumble that vibrated through the floorboards. For the blinding flash of lightning, a stagehand would toss a handful of powdered resin or a pinch of finely ground lycopodium spores into the flame of a shielded lantern. The result was a sudden, brilliant flare of light, a white-hot crackle that illuminated the entire stage for a split second, perfectly mimicking a strike from above. Then came the rain itself, simulated by stagehands tipping large, perforated containers filled with water or even fine dust from the rafters, the droplets or particles catching the lantern light as they fell. The true mastery was in the coordination. The flash of powder would be timed precisely with the loudest beat of the metal sheet, fusing light and sound into a single, terrifying event. The patter of the simulated rain would begin just after, creating a cascading sensory experience that felt completely authentic. In a play about Noah or the wrath of a forgotten god, this was not a special effect. It was a manifestation of divine power, a clear signal that the natural order had been upended, and the characters on stage were at the mercy of forces far beyond their control. This multisensory assault tapped into a primal fear of the uncontrollable elements, making the story's stakes feel immediate and terrifyingly real. By engaging sight, sound, and even the feel of mist in the air, these performers proved that the most powerful illusions are those that envelop you completely, turning a story into an experience you could feel in your bones. This command over the elements set the stage for illusions that traded atmospheric dread for something far more personal, placing the audience themselves in the direct path of simulated peril. A performer would tip their head back and slide a gleaming steel blade down their throat, a feat that seemed to defy the very limits of the human body. While many sword swallowers possessed the genuine, harrowing skill of suppressing their gag reflex and carefully guiding a blade past vital organs, others amplified the spectacle with clever artifice. For those who opted for deception, the tools of the trade were ingenious. One version used a sword with a blade that could collapse into the hilt, much like a telescoping stage prop. As the performer appeared to push the weapon deeper, the blade would retract, creating the terrifying illusion that the entire length of steel was vanishing into their body. An even more startling variation employed a carefully positioned mirror. The performer would stand with their back to a section of the crowd, and an angled mirror, hidden within their costume or a nearby prop, would reflect the sword's hilt. To those viewing from that specific angle, it looked as though the tip of the blade had pierced straight through the performer's torso, with the hilt jutting out from their back in a grotesque and impossible manner. The true mastery, however, was in the performance itself. The slow, deliberate pacing, the wide-eyed look of pained concentration, and the dramatic pause before the final push all worked in concert to heighten the tension. They played directly upon the crowd's most visceral fears of puncture and internal injury, making the eventual safe removal of the blade feel like a genuine miracle. This powerful combination of potential danger and clever trickery elevated the performer from a mere acrobat to a near-mythical figure who could conquer death itself. It was a perfect example of how medieval entertainers blended real risk with stage deception to maximize wonder. This fascination with simulated peril naturally evolved into narratives of escape, where a hero would be bound in chains only to break free through a mixture of skill and secret knowledge. The clatter of heavy chains was a sound every medieval soul understood, a noise that meant the end of freedom. Yet on the festival stage, this sound was the prelude to a miracle. A prisoner bound from neck to ankle in what appeared to be unbreakable iron links would be locked inside a makeshift cell. As the audience watched, a curtain would drop for the briefest of moments, or a sudden puff of smoke would obscure the scene. When it cleared, the prisoner stood unfettered, the chains lying in a heap on the floor. The secret was a beautiful deception. The chains themselves were often the trick, crafted with one link made of a brittle alloy that could be snapped with a sharp, twisting motion. Alternatively, a lock might be gimmicked, appearing secure from the front but opening with a simple, hidden catch or a twist of a specific ring. The performer practiced for countless hours, not just to work the mechanisms, but to master the performance of confinement, struggling convincingly against his bonds before the moment of concealment. This made the eventual release seem all the more impossible. In stories of martyrs or folk heroes, this was not a mere stunt. It was a powerful allegory for the triumph of the human spirit over earthly tyranny, a visual promise that no prison, whether of stone or iron, could hold a righteous soul. The entire performance was a delicate dance between real physical skill and the psychological art of misdirection, where the audience's belief in the strength of the chains was the very thing that made their breaking so magical. This foundational principle of escape, relying on gimmicked props and precise timing, would soon be scaled up into far more elaborate and perilous puzzles. A lute could play a haunting melody with no musician in sight, its strings plucked by invisible fingers. This self-playing instrument was a marvel of hidden engineering, a precursor to the player pianos of later centuries. The secret was often a rotating barrel, much like a large music box mechanism concealed inside the instrument's body. This wooden cylinder was studded with precisely placed pins that, as it turned, would catch on and pull small levers connected to the strings, producing a pre-programmed tune. For more complex or improvised music, the real performer was hidden nearby, perhaps behind a painted screen or beneath a hollow stage. They would play a second, identical lute, and their music would be piped through a concealed tube that seemed to emanate from the automated instrument on display. The illusion was sold by the stillness of the prop. The lute sat on a stand, perhaps gently rocking from a hidden wire to suggest a spectral presence, while the music flowed from it uninterrupted. In a scene depicting a fairy court or a ghostly banquet, this was not a clever trick. It was proof of an unseen world, a tangible sign that spirits or angels were making their presence known through the universal language of music. This fusion of clockwork and ventriloquism tapped into deep-seated beliefs about automation and magic, making the audience wonder if a machine could possess a soul. It demonstrated how sound could be detached from its source to create a completely new reality. A principle that would soon be used to orchestrate not just a single instrument, but the synchronized actions of an entire cast of performers. A single dancer could fill the stage with an entire chorus of her own reflection. This multiplying dancer illusion was a breathtaking display of precision, where one woman's movements blossomed into a perfectly synchronized troupe. The secret was a carefully constructed V-shaped arrangement of large, polished metal mirrors, positioned so that their surfaces faced each other at slight angles. The solo dancer performed in the narrow space at the point of the V, her every step and gesture instantly caught and repeated by the reflective panels. The true genius, however, was in the choreography. She had to move with absolute consistency, ensuring her limbs never extended beyond the precise sight lines that would reveal the edges of the mirrors. Her timing had to be flawless, creating the seamless illusion that every reflection was an independent, yet perfectly coordinated performer. This visual harmony was no accident. In the courts of nobles, this spectacle was a powerful metaphor for a well-ordered society, where many individuals moved as one under a single ruler's guidance. At a secular fair, it was a symbol of pure abundance, transforming a single performer's skill into a feast for the eyes. The entire effect hinged on meticulous lighting, with lamps and torches placed to illuminate the dancer without creating a telltale glare on the mirrors that would shatter the spell. This beautiful confluence of art, geometry, and performance demonstrated that the most elegant illusions often require the most rigid discipline. The dancer was not just an artist, but a living part of a human kaleidoscope, her body becoming the source of an impossible abundance. These principles of reflection and repetition did not vanish with the end of the medieval era. They echoed through the centuries, finding new life in the grand ballets of the royal courts and later, in the earliest experiments with photography and film, where capturing and multiplying an image became the foundation of a new visual language. A king's authority could be solidified by his apparent defiance of gravity itself. The levitating throne was the ultimate symbol of power, a seat that seemed to rest on nothing but divine will. The mechanics behind this breathtaking sight were a masterful combination of hidden supports and optical trickery. The throne itself was a sturdy, ornate chair, but it was anchored to a platform made of a transparent material, often a carefully polished and shaped piece of clear quartz or crystal. In more common setups, strong, blackened iron wires, nearly invisible against the dim interior of a church or hall, supported the entire structure from the rafters above. The true genius, however, lay in the strategic placement of large mirrors on the floor around the base of the throne. These were angled to reflect the patterned floor or a plain, dark cloth, creating the perfect illusion of empty, continuous space beneath the floating monarch. Assistants played a crucial role in selling the deception. Dressed in robes that matched the background, they would slowly wave large swaths of fabric or release gentle clouds of incense smoke around the throne's base. This movement did more than just look mystical. It actively obscured any possible glimpse of the transparent platform or the subtle glint of a supporting wire, making the throne's suspension seem absolute and magical. For the gathered court or congregation, this was not a clever trick. It was a visible affirmation that their ruler was touched by the divine, operating on a plane above mere mortals and the common laws of physics. This fusion of stagecraft and statecraft was a powerful tool, transforming political authority into a supernatural fact. It demonstrated that the most effective illusions are those that serve a greater narrative, making the audience believe not just in the spectacle, but in the unassailable right of the person at its center. This manipulation of perception to enhance power set the stage for a different kind of deception, one that would take the vastness of the outdoors and reshape it to tell an epic story. A colossal silhouette could loom over the entire town square, its head brushing the eaves of the tallest buildings. The giant's shadow was a masterpiece of scale, transforming a tiny puppet into a terrifying titan. A performer would set up a large, light-colored sheet or simply use the flat, blank facade of a church or guild hall as their screen. Behind this, they placed a single, powerful light source, often a lantern with its flame carefully focused or a small, controlled fire. Between the light and the screen, they manipulated a small carved figure or sometimes even contorted their own hands and body. The closer this small object was held to the flame, the larger and more distorted its shadow became upon the great canvas of the wall. A simple step forward with the puppet made the giant's shadow take a earth-shaking stride, while a raised arm became a threatening gesture that seemed to block out the moon. The visual deception was amplified by a chilling soundscape. Hidden performers used leather-speaking tubes to bellow deep, echoing roars, while others pounded on great drums or shook sheets of metal to simulate the creature's footsteps. In a folk tale about a hero defending the village or a morality play about overcoming inner demons, this was not a small doll on a stick. It was the embodiment of a collective fear, a shared nightmare given form and scale that everyone could see at once. Its brilliant accessibility meant any traveling troupe could carry the means for this epic in their pack, making the giant a familiar, thrilling visitor to festivals everywhere. This direct engagement with communal space naturally invited the crowd to become part of the story, shouting warnings to the hero or gasping in unison as the shadow advanced, blurring the line between spectator and participant. A single voice could shape the vision of an entire crowd, transforming empty air into a sacred portrait. This was the communal miracle, an illusion that lived not in smoke or mirrors, but within the minds of the audience itself. A master of ceremonies standing before a rising plume of incense would declare with absolute authority that the face of a saint was now materializing within the haze. He would not simply state it, he would describe it in vivid, sensory detail. Look, you can see the gentle curve of his smile, the wise light in his eyes, the flowing white of his beard taking form. This guided narration planted a powerful suggestion, a seed of an image in every person's imagination. In the charged atmosphere of a festival, surrounded by hundreds of their neighbors, the pressure to conform was immense. If the person next to you gasped and pointed, claiming to see the vision, your own brain would scramble to match their experience, to fill in the ambiguous shapes of the smoke with the promised details. It was a perfect storm of psychology, blending the deep desire to believe with the fundamental human need to belong. Those who initially saw nothing might remain silent, not wanting to appear faithless or spiritually blind. Soon, a wave of affirmation would sweep through the crowd, as individual expectations fused into a single, reported reality. Dozens, then hundreds, would leave the festival swearing on their lives that they had witnessed a divine apparition. This was stagecraft at its most sophisticated, bypassing complex machinery to manipulate the most powerful tool of all, human consciousness. It proved that the most resilient illusions are those we help to build ourselves. The secrets behind these 28 wonders were not meant to be forgotten after the festival's end. They were carefully guarded, passed down through generations of artisans who understood that their power lay in mystery. Even the most common coin could defy reality in the hands of a skilled street performer. The disappearing coin was an intimate miracle, a small defiance of physics played out in the open air for a handful of onlookers. Its power lay not in complex machinery, but in the flawless execution of human dexterity. The performer's hands were his greatest tool, trained through years of practice to palm a coin, tucking it secretly between the thumb and the fleshy part of the palm, all while the fingers remained open and relaxed. Misdirection was the other half of the spell. As his fingers executed the secret move, his eyes would lock with a spectator's, or he would launch into a quick, humorous story about a foolish farmer or a greedy merchant. Your attention was expertly guided to his face and his words, leaving his hands to perform their silent work under the guise of casual gestures. Sometimes, a tiny, concealed mirror sewn into his sleeve or a hidden pouch in his tunic would aid the deception, catching the light or swallowing the object at the critical moment. The final reveal, plucking the coin from behind a child's ear or from the beard of a bemused baker, was a moment of pure, shared delight. This simple trick was the bedrock upon which all magic was built. It demonstrated the core principles that powered the grandest stage illusions: misdirection, manual skill, and the psychological art of controlling an audience's focus. Because it required no elaborate stage, it was the most democratic of wonders, performed in dusty marketplaces for peasants and nobles alike. A wealthy merchant and a lowly servant could stand side by side, equally baffled and equally entertained, their social divisions momentarily forgotten in a shared moment of astonishment. This close-up magic created a unique bond, a direct line of wonder between the artist and the individual, proving that the most powerful illusions are often the ones that happen right under your nose. While the coin trick relied on fleeting skill and personal connection, the next evolution of stagecraft sought to create a different kind of magic, one etched not in movement but in stone, transforming the very architecture of the town into a permanent fixture of wonder. A torch that refused to die, even when plunged into a bucket of water, defied everything an audience knew about fire. This ever-burning torch was a stunning defiance of nature, powered by the earliest experiments in chemistry. The secret often lay in the fuel itself. A torch soaked in oils rendered from animal fat or certain slow-burning resins would create a flame that was difficult to extinguish, especially if it was shielded by a metal cap or cage that protected the core of the fire from a sudden dousing. For the most dramatic effect, performers turn to more exotic materials. Quicklime, for instance, reaches a white-hot intensity when exposed to water and can actually ignite flammable gases, creating the illusion that the flame was thriving in its watery prison. In other setups, the deception was more direct. A second, smaller flame was hidden inside a perforated metal tube within the torch's head. When the main flame was dramatically submerged, this protected inner fire remained burning, ready to reignite the outer fuel the moment the torch was pulled back into the air. The performance was everything. The illusionist would build the suspense, inviting a spectator to blow directly on the flame or to witness its immersion in a barrel. The audience saw the water splash and the steam rise, yet the fire persisted, flickering defiantly as if it possessed a life of its own. In the narrative of a hero's quest, this unquenchable light symbolized an unbreakable spirit or a vow that could not be undone. It was a physical promise of endurance in a world full of uncertainty, a small but potent miracle that blended the emerging science of alchemy with the timeless art of the showman. These 28 Stagecraft illusions were far more than simple tricks for a day's entertainment. They were the special effects of their era, a testament to a vibrant culture of innovation that lived in the space between faith, folklore, and a deep-seated human desire to witness the impossible. The principles they pioneered did not vanish when the festival banners were taken down. The smoke and mirrors that conjured angels evolved into the green screens and digital composites of our modern films. The mechanical beasts that roared on a pageant wagon are the direct ancestors of the animatronics that thrill us in theme parks today. Every time you watch a superhero defy gravity on screen or see a magician perform a seemingly impossible feat, you are witnessing the legacy of those medieval artisans who first learned to engineer wonder, proving that the tools may change but the magic remains. A woven saint could raise a hand in blessing, his embroidered fingers moving as if touched by life itself. The animated tapestry was a special kind of sorcery, one that infused the very walls of a castle or chapel with motion. These were not simple wall hangings, but complex stages in their own right. Performers worked behind the heavy fabric, using carefully shielded lanterns to project the shadows of small puppets or articulated cutouts onto the reverse side of the cloth. To the viewers in the hall, it appeared that the intricately stitched figures were moving of their own volition. A knight on horseback would charge across the field of fabric, his lance lowered for a joust that seemed to happen right within the threads. A saint might kneel in prayer, then slowly rise with arms outstretched as a golden halo seemed to ignite around her head, an effect created by a flickering candle placed directly behind a piece of yellow glass. The controlled, dim light of an indoor space was essential, allowing these subtle plays of light and shadow to shine without competition from the sun. This transformed grand halls during feasts, where a static scene of a historical battle could suddenly erupt into life, enriching the story being told by the host or the bard. It was a seamless fusion of the weaver's art and the puppeteer's skill, turning passive decoration into an active, immersive narrative. This blurring of boundaries showed how medieval artists saw every surface as a potential canvas for wonder, a tradition of integrated spectacle that would one day influence everything from shadow puppetry to the earliest projected images. A desperate cough could transform into a vibrant smile in the blink of an eye. The Miraculous Healing was the ultimate act of stagecraft, a performance that blurred the line between hope and manipulation. An actor portraying a grievously ill beggar would be brought before a crowd, his skin painted a sickly pallor and his body contorted in apparent pain. The healer, often a traveling charlatan or a monk seeking to enhance the prestige of a local relic, would perform an elaborate ritual. this was the moment for hidden props to do their work. A pouch of pig's blood concealed in the actor's mouth would be bitten at the healer's command, creating the illusion of a bloody cough that was then miraculously cured. A fake bone crafted from brittle plaster or hollowed wood would be strapped to a limb and then snapped with a loud crack that was actually the sound of the prop breaking, not the actor's real arm. As the healer made a grand gesture, the actor would swiftly shed his tattered, stained outer robe, revealing a clean, healthy tunic underneath. This quick change, executed in the space of a deep bow, was the final proof of transformation. The entire sequence was shielded by a coordinated distraction. Assistants would release a sudden, fragrant cloud of incense, or a chorus of voices would swell into a hymn, pulling the crowd's gaze away from the precise moment the blood pouch was discarded or the costume was shed. For those in the audience suffering from real, incurable ailments, this was not a play. It was a tangible promise, a spark of desperate belief fanned by a cruel deception. It demonstrated the dark side of this craft, where the same ingenuity that created angels could also forge false miracles, preying on the most vulnerable for profit or power. This final illusion serves as a powerful reminder of the ethical line these artisans walked, a line between wonder and exploitation. When we look back across all 28 of these Stagecraft marvels, from the floating angel to the fake healing, we see a complete toolkit for shaping reality. They were not separate tricks but interconnected parts of a grand tradition. The same smoke that hid a trapdoor also obscured a quick change. The same mirrors that multiplied a chalice could also make a throne float. These illusions collectively built the sensory world of the medieval imagination, making abstract faith tangible and epic stories immediate. They provided comfort, fear, excitement, and conviction, all within the shared space of the town square. Their legacy is not confined to history books. The principles they established, the very grammar of special effects, echo in every movie, every theme park ride, and every magic show we experience today. They teach us that the desire to see the impossible is a timeless part of the human spirit, and that the tools to create it have always been within our reach, waiting for a clever mind to assemble them into wonder. The echo of a dragon's roar can still be heard in the thunderous sound design of a modern blockbuster. These 28 medieval illusions did not simply fade into history. They underwent a remarkable evolution, laying the very groundwork for the special effects we take for granted today. The smoke that once hid a trapdoor on a pageant wagon is now the digital fog and atmosphere rendered by a computer, creating depth and mystery on screen. The carefully angled mirrors that floated a throne or multiplied a dancer have transformed into the green screens and CGI composites that place actors in fantastical worlds. Every time you watch a superhero fly, you are seeing the direct descendant of the rope and pulley system that lifted a soul to heaven in a morality play. The lineage is just as clear in physical spaces. The complex mechanical beasts that snarled and breathed fire in a town square are the ancestors of the sophisticated animatronics that bring theme park characters to life. Their internal systems of levers and pneumatics are direct inheritance from those early craftsmen. Even the Phantom Army, conjured from shadows and lantern light, finds its modern equivalent in the massive digital armies of epic films, where a few performers are multiplied into a legion. This historical thread reveals a profound truth about human creativity. Our tools have grown exponentially more complex, from polished metal to quantum computing, but the core principles of illusion remain strikingly consistent. Misdirection, forced perspective, the manipulation of light and sound, these are the timeless tools of the Wonder Maker. By studying these ancient deceptions, we gain more than just historical insight. We understand the unchanging human appetite for the impossible. We see that innovation is rarely about inventing something entirely new, but about adapting simple, powerful ideas to new technologies and new audiences. This journey through medieval stagecraft is not just a look back at clever tricks. It is a reminder that the magic we seek in our stories has always been with us, crafted by ingenious minds who knew how to turn simple mechanics into lasting wonder. From appearing saints to floating angels, we have uncovered the secrets behind 28 stagecraft illusions that once captivated entire towns, revealing a world where art and engineering merge to create pure magic. These deceptions were far more than simple tricks for a day's entertainment. They were a vibrant reflection of medieval society's deepest beliefs, its fears, and its boundless ingenuity. They shaped both entertainment and spirituality, turning abstract faith into something you could see with your own eyes and making epic stories feel as immediate as the ground beneath your feet. As we close this journey, remember that the desire to be amazed, to witness the impossible, connects us directly across the centuries. The principles behind these illusions, the clever use of smoke, mirrors, and mechanics, continue to influence how we tell stories today, from the grandest blockbuster film to the most intimate magic show. I would love to hear which of these 28 wonders fascinated you the most, so please share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this journey into history's hidden wonders, subscribe for more explorations into the past. Keep seeking out those moments of wonder and never stop exploring the beautiful boundary between reality and imagination.